We checked with independent...
David Galernter writes that in America we have suppressed traditional religion, and as a result we're reaping the whirlwind, including such tragedies as this week in California where 39 people committed suicide. Do you think a lot of America's problems today are rooted in the lack of belief in God?
Yes, I do believe that in America today there is much talk of God, much prayer to God, but very little obedience to the will of God. And when we disobey God's laws, statutes, and commandments, ultimately we have to reap consequences, and those consequences America is reaping today.
You have talked a lot in recent years of reconciliation, yet many people in America, especially whites, look upon you as a divisive character. They believe that the Nation of Islam preaches racial separation. In the spirit of reconciliation, what do you have to say to people who look upon you as a divisive leader?
Well, first, let me say that racial separation did not start with the Nation of Islam and Louis Farrakhan. You would have to agree that racial separation and segregation started when whites brought our fathers here as slaves, and we couldn't worship together, we couldn't eat together, we couldn't go to toilet together, we couldn't even be buried together. And today we live in separated and segregated communities, and according to what scholars and scientists say, that separation or segregation is as alive today as it was during the time of Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. So what Farrakhan is saying is that if we're going to be separate, then why shouldn't we profit from that separation by organizing ourselves and pooling our resources and doing something for ourselves?
So you are assuming that America will forever remain a segregated land?
No, I'm not assuming that. But if we look at reality, reality tells us that that is the fact today. Now, who is willing to step forward to correct the conditions that keep the races divided and at odds with each other? How can people say they're sincere about reconciliation and healing the racial divide, and I, Louis Farrakhan, have become a significant voice among black people, listened to by an ever-growing number of our people, yet because you disagree with me, you will not sit down and dialogue with me? That is irrational, nonsensical, and inappropriate if we wish to solve the racial divide.
So you're suggesting that it is time for leaders of all races to sit down with you and talk man to man about the future of America?
I think it is intelligent. Certainly there are areas of disagreement. Certainly there are areas maybe where you take great exception with Louis Farrakhan. But how can you change me if you won't talk to me? And how can I get you to understand me if I'm not allowed to talk to you? This no-talk policy is not good for the healing the racial divide. It is not good for reconciliation and atonement.
Yesterday, President Clinton issued a national radio address. He talked about the topic of racism. There has been a suggestion that the White House might even convene a summit here in Washington on the topic sometime soon. Would you like to be invited to that summit? In fact, should you be invited to that summit?
Well, that would be up to President Clinton. I would hope he would not be as unwise as others who say, well, Farrakhan should not be included in a dialogue. If you leave me off to the corner, Farrakhan is not going away. My influence will not diminish, nor will power diminish. It will grow as influence grows, and so it's better to sit down with me now, because I think you will have to sit down with me later.
Minister Farrakhan, a great deal has been written about your relationship with Jews. You have offered on several occasions to sit down and meet with Jewish leaders. You had a meeting last year with Edgar Bronfman. It has been depicted in the press as a pleasant meeting, and yet soon after that, it blew up, and he, in fact, called you the incarnation of evil. What happened?
Well, I think you would have to ask Mr. Bronfman. It was a great meeting. It was warm. We were frank in our discussions. It is highly improper to say that it was a meeting where money was raised. Farrakhan never raised anything about money. Our problem is too serious to think that money alone can solve it. We have to genuinely dialogue. Now, Mr. Bronfman never said to me what I said in a speech later that week in Brooklyn that so incensed him, but I think he came under tremendous pressure from the other presidents of Jewish organizations, and this was a comfortable way for him to get out of it by calling Louis Farrakhan the embodiment of evil. My God, it's almost laughable that a man as big as he is and as powerful as he is would sink to that, which goes to show that anybody who speaks to me or would speak a kind word about my good work in the black community, as Jack Kemp did, as Mr. Novak did, will come under tremendous fire and, like the turtle, may be forced to pull their head back under the shell. But Louis Farrakhan is not going to go away, and I'm afraid that you will come to regret the day that I offered you a chance to let us sit down together and dialogue, and you, in your emotional reaction, rejected that offer.
Minister Farrakhan, that sounds like a threat. What do you mean that people may come to regret it? How?
You will, because if my influence and growth in power in America does not diminish, and it will not by the help of God, then what benefit would it be to you not to sit down and dialogue with me? When the racial problem is not getting better, it is getting worse. And at the center of that is a voice that is being listened to more and more, not only by my people, but Hispanics, Arabs, Asians, and some white people are beginning to listen. You're going to have to sit down with me sooner or later. Why not make it sooner?
Minister Farrakhan, a number of Jewish leaders point to your citation in the past of a couple of books that they regard as frankly racist and even genocidal. I'm speaking of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and also the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. Do you renounce these books?
Now, the Protocols, we don't use that book at all. You can never find any speech that I have made in 42 years where I quote from the Protocols. However, that book called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, if it is a false book of lies, I will denounce that book. But our research department researched in Jewish libraries and in libraries across this country, and we quoted learned Jewish scholars and rabbis who are not anti-Semitic. So if the Jewish leaders will condemn the Jewish persons that we quoted as liars, then of course we will denounce the book. But no one in the Jewish community has come forward to condemn the Jewish writers and scholars whom we quoted in our book, saying that Jews had a part in the slave trade.
Well,
Jews
sir, as
admit
you know,
that.
Sir, as you know, the book does more than that. It attributes as much as 75% of the slave trade to
No,
American Jews.
it said that 75% of Jews in the South owned slaves. That is an accurate quote.
So if, in fact, a group of scholars could sit down with you and persuade you that the scholarship is questionable, you would renounce the book?
Yes, if they are willing to renounce those whom we quote that they have never renounced before, then we would look at that scholarship questionably.
Mr. Farrakhan, you have repeatedly in the last year condemned anti-Semitism. Define anti-Semitism for me.
Well, you know, every year it appears anti-Semitism is redefined, not by Louis Farrakhan, but by those who claim I am anti-Semitic. To me, anti-Semitism would be someone who hates Jewish people because of their faith, or hates, a racist would be one who hates somebody because of their color and then uses resources and power to diminish the effectiveness of that people called Jews or Arabs or whites in their pursuit of happiness. I am not anti-Semitic. And if you check the record of the Nation of Islam under my leadership in the last 20 years, you cannot find one act, one Muslim that has been arrested anywhere in America for a hate crime against Jews or whites. We just do not practice that. So how in the world can you call me anti-Semitic if I criticize Jewish behavior that I feel ill affects black people and our advancement in the pursuit of happiness? I criticize Jews, I criticize whites, but I'm not anti-white. I criticize America, but I'm not anti-American. I criticize Arabs, but I'm not anti-Arab. I criticize black people, and I am not anti-black. I criticize those things that all of us do that are in absolute disobedience to the will, the laws, the statutes, and the commandments of God.
Minister
And why
Farrakhan,
do I do this? I do this to bring us all back into the favor of God.
Minister Farrakhan, we will pick up on that theme when we return. Stay with us, folks. We will be back right after this break.
Freedom can't come from white folks. Freedom can't come from staying here and petitioning this great government. We're here to make a statement to the great government, but not to beg them.
Welcome back to Fox News Sunday. I'm speaking with Nation of Islam leader Minister Louis Farrakhan, who joins us now from our Fox News Bureau in Chicago. Minister Farrakhan, Elijah Muhammad teaches that Allah will destroy America. What does that mean?
It means that America is in a prophetic role in Scripture that parallels the role of ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, ancient Rome, ancient Sodom and Gomorrah. And America stands today at the door either of greatness or destruction. She has reached the pinnacle of success, and there's nowhere else to go when you reach the pinnacle but down. In America, you have all the nations and races of the earth. You have the potential to make America the basis for the kingdom of God. However, if the people of America indulge consistently in that which is against the law, the will, the statutes, the commandments of God, then America brings on herself divine chastisement. And that is why I believe that the 10 plagues that Pharaoh suffered and the turning of Babylon's neighboring nations against her, now those plagues are in America and they are increasing, and America's neighbors are beginning to turn against her as it was with ancient Babylon. And so I don't think we need to be careless in the way we observe our own actions in light of prophecy.
You, in many ways, agree with Christian conservatives on key issues. You oppose homosexuality. You are very strongly opposed to abortion. You believe in personal responsibility, entrepreneurship, and abstaining from liquor. Why is it that you have not been able to build better bridges with, say, the Christian Coalition?
It is because the Christian Coalition comes to know Louis Farrakhan largely through the media. They have never sat with me. They have never discussed with me. I believe that if there were, in fact, any dialogue, which it appears that there are some who really do not wish this dialogue to take place, I believe that the Christian Coalition will see much in the teachings of Islam that they can coalesce with, that they can unite with, to produce a better moral and spiritual climate in America.
Who do you think does not want such a meeting to take place?
Well, it's clear that when Mr. Novak and...
You're speaking of columnist Robert Novak.
Robert Novak and Roland Evans invited me to be on their show, and then subsequent to that spoke kind words about me. And when Jude Winniski invited me to Boca Raton to speak to some heavy hitters in the Republican Party, all of a sudden, these men come under intense fire. Jack Kemp spoke kind words about me, but he's come under intense pressure, as though Farrakhan is some sort of fellow with spiritual aids, and that no one should have any spiritual intercourse with this man. That is silly, and I think it should stop, and we should sit down and talk. Both the Christian Coalition, the Democrats and the Republicans, Jews as well, let's sit down and talk about the areas in which we agree and disagree and see if you can affect me to produce change. I'm open for that kind of dialogue. If you show me where I am wrong in anything that I teach, I will give it up. But if you don't dialogue with me, you cannot affect me, and nor can I positively affect you.
You have mentioned several times your desire to meet with other groups, but it's as if you're waiting for them to invite you. Why don't you just invite them? Why don't you invite Ralph Reed over? Why don't you ask Abe Foxman to come sit down with you? Why don't you take the first step?
We have, for the last 13 years, ever since the Jesse Jackson campaign, we have tried to sit down with the leadership of the ADL, Nathan Perlmutter, before Mr. Abe Foxman. And at no time have we gotten any positive response. They want to sit down with me, but they offer preconditions. I want to say very categorically, Louis Farrakhan is not your little boy. I'm not going to come to you or the government of the United States on bended knee like your former slave. I am a man, and you will talk with me and with black people today, not in that old paternalistic way, but you will speak with me man to man, or we will not dialogue at all. I'm not begging you for acceptance. I am accepted of God, and he is sufficient for me. But if we are to get along, don't come to me with preconditions. Let's sit down and talk like men. Or are you afraid of the truth that is in my mouth? If you can defeat what I believe is truth, you have no problem with me. I'll apologize to you before the entire world. But I doubt very seriously if any of your scholars can defeat one atom of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that was revealed to him by God. I put that challenge in your lap. I'll come to Congress, I'll come to the ADL, I'll come anywhere you want me to come. Let's sit down and dialogue. I'll speak in the synagogue if you will have me, and I will speak before the board of rabbis. There's no place in America that I am afraid to go with what I believe and what I know.
Minister
Why won't
Farrakhan?
you allow that?
Minister
Are you afraid?
Minister Farrakhan, it has been reported that you have said that AIDS was created by Jewish doctors.
I never said
You
that.
didn't know. That's why I was asking. So
I never said that. We believe that AIDS is a man-made virus. And many Jewish scholars, one of the leading doctors, Dr. Horowitz, has written a book where he details that this is absolutely a man-made virus. If it is not, then let's go before the world and prove that. You have scholars, and certainly Dr. Horowitz and many who agree with him say that absolutely it is a virus, a man-made virus, that is being transmitted to the public through injection and of course, so-called contaminated vaccines.
you recently went on a friendship tour right after the Million Man March to a number of countries that are not on the best of terms with the United States, including Libya, Iran, and Iraq. When you reached Iran, it is reported again that you referred to America as the Great Satan. Is that true?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Iran refers to America as the Great Satan. When I stood in Iran and spoke before 5 million Iranians and 60 million more on television, I spoke to reconcile the differences not only between Iran and Iraq, but between Iran and America. I did the same in Libya, and I did the same in Iraq and Syria. And there is no country on this earth that does not want better relationships with America. But the old John Wayne mentality of forcing people to bow down to you, that will not work in the 21st century. We need a new approach to foreign policy. Cuba will not bow to that, nor will Iran, nor will Iraq, nor will Syria, and soon you will turn the world against you. You can't make China a boogeyman because you don't like China's so-called human rights policies, but China can throw it right back in America's face. What are you doing about human rights and the thousands of people that are suffering in America?
Minister Farrakhan, are there any nations with which the United States should not have relations?
I think as the only remaining superpower, there is no nation on this earth that does not want good relations and better relations with America. But those relations must be based upon principles of justice and equity and recognizing other nations' sovereignty and the right to self-determination. That is a human right. Cuba has a right to choose whatever form of government she wants.
Mr. Farrakhan, I understand that. Frankly, I was trying to get at Israel. You have in the past described some Zionists, and you have been misquoted on this largely, but you've said some Zionists are practitioners of a dirty religion. Therefore, I ask you, do you think the United States should have direct relations with Israel?
Of course the United States should have direct relations with Israel. What is going on in the Middle East is very, very, very sad. It is sad that Netanyahu will say he's going to build in East Jerusalem, and all of the members of the Security Council, with the exception of America, disagree with that. The world nations disagree with that. America says she disagreed with that, but she vetoed that resolution, and therefore Netanyahu goes ahead with it. Then the Palestinians respond with violence, and now you have the peace process all but derailed. If you want peace based on principles of justice. And where there is no justice, there will never be any peace.
Minister Farrakhan, thank you so much. I hope you'll return and join us again, and we can continue this dialogue. When we return,